this proposal, I would like to share with you the process, what have been accomplished, what have been done. Did that idea just being uttered and then went into the darkness and nobody kind of catch it? No, actually, the idea, when it was announced by the founder of the Progressive Peace Foundation, immediately was picked up by the former speaker of the Philippine Parliament, Jose de Benicio Jr., and he admired the insight and the timely idea, and he said, this is it. He's been 6th time Speaker of the Parliament of the Philippines, as far as I remember. Very prominent political figure, incredible mind, a harmonizer. Worked with many political leaders around the world, not only in the Philippines, and he kind of just jumped on this idea, and he said, this is a great idea. Immediately he went and spoke with Condoleezza Rice at that time, spoke with Bush, I believe, and then came up and also spoke to the Secretary General of the United Nations, and at that time, I believe Kofi Annan, and he adopted the idea as something which really need to be taken seriously and move forward with. I said taken seriously because in the United Nations, the past decades, actually there is no mention about spirituality or religion, or I mean, when you can't find the word God around the United Nations corridors. You can't find, even when you see kind of a religious person with a religious attire, if it is a turban or if it is a cross or something, you kind of, people wonder why this person is here, rather than welcome and say, hey, this is a blessing of God coming to us. They wonder. And again, I don't want to be critical to the UN, but I want to be also realistic that the aspect of spirituality is being missing in the United Nations. And we as a human being are a spiritual being, as physical problem, as spiritual problem. And we need to include both in the solution of our problem, the spiritual aspect and the physical aspect. Again, this man, Jose de Benicio Jr., took this promise very seriously, took this idea very seriously, and the mission of the Philippines and the United Nations adopted this idea. For anything to happen at the UN is a house of governments, a club of governments. We are an NGO in a consultative status with the United Nations. We presented an idea. The NGO cannot make that idea come to pass unless a government adopted that idea. And once the government liked the idea, the government seek consultation also with other member states and see if this idea kind of good or bad, or can we move forward with it? Could you help me? Because there is a voting involved. Do we need to tweak it a little bit? Do we need to take this word out of here? How compromising and trying to include as many people as possible within, quote unquote, the resolution which should go to the General Assembly, and all the nation after that will vote. So there will be consultation behind closed doors first to kind of weigh the idea, and then they will write a resolution together, and then they will look at it together and then try to bring more support to it. And the final stage basically goes to the General Assembly and then people vote on it. There are issues to be considered, issue of money. When an idea comes, does it cost money? And if it costs money, who's going to pay? The UN, everybody goes to the UN, every nation goes to the UN. Why do you think nations go to the UN? For what reason? They go to the UN fundamentally for the interest of the nation. Every nation is looking for their interest first, I believe, and then second, the interest of the other nation. I will scratch your back, you could scratch my back, that kind of mentality. Although the ideal of the UN it should be that we all put together our effort to work for the greater goodness. That would be much better. But we see many times that nations are going there looking for their own perspective, their own views, their own interests, and trying to twist other people's arm if they can, or if they bring them by choice, that's better, but if not, they twist their arms. I'm not going to give you aid if you don't do this or that. And things become kind of quote-unquote political. So again, coming back just to give you a background, and then you go through these motions of the text itself, looking at the text. Shall we put a dot here, or a comma, or a phrase? Or shall we phrase this? Shall we code this phrase and put it between brackets and deal with it later? There's a process. And the people who come to the UN representing their nations are very, very, very clever people. Some of them, they go back and become Minister of Foreign Affairs or President of their nation. Anyhow, the mission of Philippines, to make a long story short, adopted the idea, took it on, and worked on bringing some of the nations to a resolution. Not also in the UN, you need to go step by step. You have to do things kind of gradually. You can't just jump to the conclusion and you want the things to happen just like that. You saw in many resolutions being issued by the Security Council, especially in relationship to this conflict in Israel. There's always kind of a progression. It doesn't come just from the beginning, they come to the conclusion and tell you, okay, do that. They go step by step. So the mission of Indonesia took the idea and after discussion with many nations, several nations, I believe over 50, they brought a resolution to the United Nations General Assembly. It's called 5923 sort of resolution. And that resolution, the core of it is the promotion of the interreligious dialogue. That is for those who know the United Nations, is the biggest step actually forward. We in the NGO community, we were trying kind of, especially most of the NGO, many of the NGO, they have a faith-based orientation or a faith-based perspective in relationship to their work. So, but when you go to the UN and the faith-based organization, you kind of start talking about God and about spirit world. So we start talking about values, universal values. We have something called the Values Caucus. There's about, about 5,000 NGO at the UN. Half of them in a consultative status, other are in a affiliate status. But what I'm trying to say is that people cannot talk before about God directly. We have to find kind of a way to bring the spiritual values into the debate. So we formed something called the Values Caucus. The United Nations itself have days which is celebrated. They have the day which is closer, you could talk about these things, a day called Tolerance Day. And then, ironically, the president of Iran, Rafsanjani, proposed something called culture of peace, adopted by the UNESCO. Culture. These are things coming kind of closer and closer to spirituality and to religion and to the values which we want, faith-based NGOs at least want the United Nations to address. So when this resolution came out, actually it's a milestone, it's a giant step towards the fulfillment of the ultimate desire of establishing an interreligious council. So we celebrated this idea, this victory actually, or milestone, promotion of the interreligious dialogue. Ironically, at that time, the religion's influence in the world affair was very clear. People have seen it, sort of terrorism, sort of other events spreading around the world. And then we in the Universal Peace Federations, to kind of push the process further, we started kind of having models, programs in different places. We did it in Geneva, we did it in, I believe, London and other places. We especially issue related to the UN, and we brought young people, especially young people, and we asked them to, if they are representing their religion, and here is the issue, let's say issue of human rights. What is your religion could contribute with to solve this problem of human rights, abuse or violations? It was wonderful to see these young people from Islamic perspective, Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, Confucius, Shinto, sitting down there and inspired by being given the opportunity and showing from their religious perspective how could model how the religion could be augment the political process and be a contributor to the political process.